Today, man, we got God Shammgod, my good friend. We brought him on today, man, because I think he's one of the best ball handlers to ever do it. New York City guard, most guards from New York,
Appreciate it.
like Rod Strickland, Mark Jackson, my man Jason Alexander. The list goes on. There's a number of guards from New York that are like ball handlers, but I think this guy kind of took it to the next level. We were teammates in China. I knew him before then. People don't know when you play in the NBA, a lot of the guys, when you're not a starter, you have to go out maybe 2-3 hours before the game and work out.
Yeah.
So I was working out like 2 hours for the game for the Heat, and Shammgod was working out maybe 2 hours before the game for the Wizards.
Yeah.
So we kind of said what's up to each other, and that kind of started off me knowing, putting a face to a name. So I'd already heard his name. You can't be a basketball player not hear his
Name it
name.
around, right?
Yeah. So then later on, I got blessed enough where we were teammates in China. I got to really know him really well, man. Went to New York a couple of times. He even came out to see me in Harlem. So great guy, man. Great guy. Great New York City guard, and I hope today that we get a lot of good information out of him that can help a lot of kids, parents, and coaches.
Yeah, nah, definitely. Likewise, like I said, met the NBA and then, finished off in China, got a great friendship, what I'm saying, families and all that. So, for me, it's just a pleasure just to even help out and things like that.
Yeah, that's dope. Two worldly fellas. So we're just going to talk about ball handling today, kind of covering aspects of all levels. So, first question that I got, I don't know if you've seen them before, but what were the habits that defined you specifically as an elite ball handler?
For me, I mean, it kind of changes because, me growing up, I watched. I had this one cassette that was called Below the Rim, and it was like a bunch of point guards. It was like Tiny Archibald, Pistol Pete, Tim Hardaway, Kevin Johnson. And, in the early 80s and stuff like that, a lot of point guards, a lot of ball handlers always dribbled, I like to say, inside a box. Whereas it's like, if you look at Isaiah Thomas, even Tim Hardaway, everything was compact because it was easy. It was easier to get into your shot off that dribble. But what I noticed was, unless you was probably Tim Hardaway is probably the closest one to break the era, to change the era from the 80s to the 90s, because Tim Hardaway created a lot of space off his dribble. Even if you watch Isaiah Thomas dribble, he dribbled excellent, he dribbled great, but it never was creating a lot of space. Tim Hardaway between the leg crossover created a lot of space. So as I used to watch a lot of film and things like that, I always was more focused on creating space. And when I was in junior high school, I had a coach by the name of Tiny Archibald. For people that don't know him, he's the only point guard to lead the league in scoring and assists. And it was weird because, he was my PE teacher. And, back then, when you're young back then, you think everybody that playing the NBA is rich. So I was like, man, how's this dude my PE teacher? And, that's a whole nother story. But then he should always tell me, he's like, because in the beginning, I didn't know how to dribble. I used to only play defense. So I knew I had good footwork because I played defense growing up. And he was always telling me, if you basketball, you're always going to be able to be on the team and things like that. So I took that and just ran with it. And the main thing he used to always tell me is be low to the ground, because you play against guys like Muggsy Bogues and players like that that's little. So you always want to be low to the ground and shifty. So me growing up, I used to take the air out the ball, and my main focus was footwork and just being low to the ground and things like that.
Yeah, so you touched on a little bit with that answer, but what other disadvantages or challenges did you face personally that kind of, defined you as a player and produced the skills that you had as you, grew?
When you grow up in New York, you play games like 21, things like that, and it's 4 players against 1 player. And the challenge is just learn how to create opportunities to score, how to break defenders down, how to look at angles. without you even knowing, you playing these games, but you developing skills that you don't even know are skills until later on in life. Like, you know, for instance, like if you're on the court with 5 people and, you know, you playing 21. 21 is like the person that's the person that scores the 21 points. So you're going against 5 people, so you learn like who to attack, what defenders to attack, who's the weaker defender, who's slow, who's not slow, and just how to get out of situations where, you know, you got 3 people guarding you, how to get out of crowds and things like that. And that's just stuff subconscious, you know, unconsciously, that you don't even know that is a skill until you get older. And then people are looking at you like, man, like this guy always know how to get through the holes and stuff like that. But that's stuff you're building as you're growing up, being competitive, playing against different size athletes and, you know, different speed athletes and, you know, in situations like that. So growing up in New York, everybody's like learn how to dribble. That's the first thing you learn how to do is dribble. You know, in some states like North Carolina, the first thing you learn how to do is shoot, you know, but in New York, the first thing you learn how to do is dribble the basketball. And, you know, I used to just always put the work in like morning, noon, and night, and I just became obsessed with it. And the biggest thing for me is watching film and studying film. And, you know, I learned that at an early age. You know, film really helped me because I learned that ball handling is not, like most people think ball handling is by, you know, dribbling the basketball with your hands and stuff, but most of the time ball handling is really your footwork. It's your footwork that goes with your ball handling, but it's your footwork the most important part to it. Like your hands is just an illusion, you know, what's going on.
Great point.
Illusion.
Great point.
Yeah, it's crazy. So what does creativity mean to you when it comes to developing better ball handling skills? When did creativity come into the play for you?
For me, it came, like I said, by just watching a lot of film, watching different situations, different type of point guards, you know, whether they were 6'9" point guards or whether they was, you know, 5'10" point guards, you know, and as you know, it's just like Steph Curry learning how to shoot. It's like as you practice shooting or dribbling, you practice anything so much, then you just start making up your own stuff in your head. You know, it's like I tell people, I could teach 10 people how to dribble. I could teach them the same thing, and 2 of them would dribble better than the 8, and 1 of them would dribble better than all 9 of them, because his imagination, the way he think outside the box, will just come into play just by instincts and stuff like that. It's just, you know, it's just by you being in a lot of situations and just working real hard at something, and then, you know, take on the characteristics of your own. You know, like me, I used to study Tim Hardaway, Isaiah Thomas, you know, Kevin Johnson. I studied them so much that I took bits and pieces of their game and put it into my game, and then, you know, it became to what it is today. You know, so, you know, for me, it's like, you know, I always wanted to create space. So I always, like, what I ushered in, what I always say I ushered in is wide dribbling. Like, before I came up, people wasn't really wide dribbling. And I think it was more because they felt they couldn't control the ball to get back in the pocket to shoot, or it wouldn't be quick enough. And, you know, as I grew, I just started, you know, because my arms was real long and I had big hands, so I knew I could control the ball that way. So I just always do it to my advantages. The more distance I created, the more space I'll be able to create on the court, the more I'll be able to get to one place to another. And, you know, I always started high and always brought the ball down low. And then, you know, after a while, you see like Iverson, you know, Kobe, you know, players like that, you know, then they brought it in to the NBA.